And welcome to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host. And again, thanks so much for being here today. I hope you're enjoying the show. Well, I have the honor of having George White here today. He's the founder of the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center based in Waterford, Connecticut. And George, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate you coming to the station. I know myself, I'm honored, and the viewers will love to get to know you.
Well, thank you. That's great to be here.
Why don't we take them back to the beginning?
Okay.
Let's go back to your upbringing and what brought you to this point. Take some time.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Waterford, Connecticut, down the road from here, and my grandfather and father were all from, originally from Hartford, came down and settled here. So I grew up in Waterford, and then went to school in Waterford, and then went to Yale, which was founded just down the road from here. I then went to the Yale Drama School after I got out of the Army in 1961. And then I'd always wanted to go into the theater. Ever since I was about 10 years old, I was, if we might say, stricken with the bug, got the virus, and always wanted to go in the theater, much more than in film, and set my sights on doing that. So then I went to work in television, and then on my hometown in Waterford, they bought an old farm where, as a kid, I used to play in the hayloft. It had a great barn, and it was the town of Waterford bought it for Town Beach. They didn't care anything about the buildings, but they loved the beach. And I asked my father, and my wife Betsy and I were sailing with my father off the property one day, and I said, "What's going to happen to the old Hammond farm now that the town has bought it?" And I was working in television at the time. I got a job working with Talent Associates Paramount in New York. And my father said, "Oh, the town is going to use the buildings there, the barn and the outbuildings, as an exercise for the fire department. They're going to keep burning them down and practicing putting out fires." And I said, "Well, that's kind of a waste of this great property. It's right on the beach and it's beautiful." And so I went back to Yale, and I said to the dean, Dean Cantfield, because I'd graduated only a few years earlier, this is a perfect place for a summer adjunct to the Yale Drama School, plus the fact that Eugene O'Neill, of course, spent his youth, his boyhood in New London. He didn't like it, but he ended up doing it anyway. He grew up there, and it was a logical way. So, and Dean Canfield said, "Sure, that sounds like a good idea." And I was doing very well working in television, but I proposed that for Yale to pick it up. And at the 11th hour, Yale said, "I don't want to do it. We're not going to play with you." And Dean Canfield said, "Well, if you want to do this on your own," he was embarrassed, I think. "I'll help you as much as I can. I can't give you any money or can't give you Yale's involvement, but anything I can do." So the one thing which was the greatest contribution he could have made, I said, "Well, you can go to Mrs. O'Neill, Eugene O'Neill's widow, who used to haunt the O'Neill collection at the Yale Library, because O'Neill gave all of his papers in his will to Yale. He had gone 1 year to Princeton and was thrown out because he'd thrown a beer bottle through President Woodrow Wilson's window and got thrown out of Princeton. And Yale had given him an honorary degree. So I said, "If you can ask Mrs. O'Neill if we can use her husband's name to name the place," because we had the rather pretentious title of the Waterford Foundation for the Performing Arts, which is awful when I look back on it, and see if we can name it after Eugene O'Neill. And sure enough, he went to her, and she said yes. And that was really the genesis of any success, because it gave us a credibility internationally with that name that we wouldn't have had if it was just had the name of Waterford on it. And so that started the whole thing. But so all the way along, going back to my beginnings, wanting to go to be in the theater, and then going from there to the Army, and then from the Army to the Yale Drama School, and then deciding that being an actor was pretty limiting as far as I was concerned. So leaving television, and I was stuck with my foot in my mouth, frankly, with my hometown of Waterford, to what to do with these buildings, because the Dean Canfield said, I'll help you. But the biggest help was to get Mrs. O'Neill to say yes, to use the name. And he said, then I was stuck, well, what am I going to do? Here was this 95-acre farm on the beach, and we had no money. We had, I hocked a $1,200 insurance policy to get enough money to invite playwrights the first year to come up and spend a week discussing their craft with actors, directors, and designers. And so they came up that first year, and we spent the $1,200 on food, and the neighborhood put up bed and breakfast for the playwrights, which was great. I mean, in that group were people that later on became famous, like John Guare and Frank Galliano and Sam Shepard, all part of that first group that came up. And then the person that had a great deal to do with helping me, because we were, nobody, even though we had the O'Neill name, and $1,200, which we used for feeding the playwrights. So the first couple of days of food we had a week was terrific. And then the caterers sort of ran out of money, so it was American chop suey from then on. But anyway, the person that had been very famous that first year, we're talking about 1964, was Edward Albee, who had just done Virginia Woolf and had a place out in Montauk. And there was a local fellow from Waterford named Henry Gardner who had an airplane. And so I got in touch with Edward to fly him over to meet with the playwrights. And that was great, because he was wonderful and a great help. And it gave us publicity for the program. And then from then on, we wanted the playwrights. I asked them what they wanted. They were a very angry bunch in those days because they couldn't get their plays done anywhere. It was in the days when it was, if you were British, you could get your play on Broadway, but if you were American, you couldn't get your play on almost anywhere except in the coffee houses down in Greenwich Village. So Edward came over, and I said to the playwrights at the end of that 1 week what they wanted, and what they really wanted was to get their plays produced with top Broadway professionals, which was the beginning of doing that. The next year we did 2 full production plays and a lot of readings in the backyard. I got bleachers from the Little League and put them out in the backyard, and they proceeded to bring up playwrights. I brought up actors on their own, and among those first actors were people like Al Pacino, was just starting out, and then a fellow by the name of Bill Darrad, who was had been helpful to me through television. He was head of development at Universal, and he said, I've helped you. Can you help me? I have this 19-year-old stepson who is driving me crazy, and I don't want him to act, but could you bring him up? He'll mow the lawn and clip the hedge and do whatever you want. And I owed Bill a lot because he'd helped me get things going. And I said, sure. And that kid, who's still with us now, it was Michael Douglas. And Michael came and has been a friend ever since.
Now, you started out as an actor.
Right.
What made the change from acting to get you to the Eugene O'Neill Theater? What was that highway like?
I started, I did a performance, or 86 performances off Broadway of John Brown's Body, which we did, which was my last job, big job as an actor. And I thought I always wanted to be an actor, but after about the 30th performance of that, I was so bored, I was going out of my mind at going to the dressing room every day and thinking, oh God, I can't keep this up. It's just so, but I did 86 performances, and that was enough. I said, it's not for me. And then I got working in television, because I thought, well, maybe that's the way to go, in the story department at Talent Associates Paramount, which I got through my mentor, if you will, because I'd worked before in Italy as a manager in the summer of a ballet festival. And my mentor there was a guy by the name of Dale Wasserman. And Dale was the man who later went on to write One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the adaptation, and Man of La Mancha. And Dale was working in television, and he got me hooked up with David Susskind, and so I was working in television as a story department. I wasn't acting anymore, which was a relief because it wasn't as boring, and started working on scripts and doing things which I liked a lot, and then then the town ended up buying this property, and I was stuck having to do something with it. So that's the journey.
How did you get involved with the town to buy the property? Were you involved in that transition?
Yes, I was. Well, actually, we didn't buy the property. That's a very good question. And even to this day, we leased the property for $1 a year because the town had the beach, and they didn't know what to do with the buildings, and so they were perfectly, at least I think the general attitude was, well, this kid, because I was only 28 at the time, wants to do it. If he wants to do something, we'll let him have a shot at it, and if it works out, fine. If it doesn't, we haven't lost anything. But I grew up there, so that, and I went to grammar school there, so I had spies everywhere in the town, the town fathers, so I could find out what was going on from kids I'd played ball with in 7th grade. And so it was easy because my family had been in Waterford, and I knew all the players, and that's what made it, not that it was a piece of cake, but it was a lot easier because we knew the people, and the people knew our family, and that was it.
Okay, let's hold that thought. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You are tuned into Arts and Entertainment. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Smart TVs and streaming services have taken over the television industry. VSC TV is proud to announce our presence on Apple TV and Roku to make watching your favorite shows even easier. You can access this service by downloading the Cablecast ScreenWeave app. Then choose Valley Shore Community TV from the list of channels. Select VSC TV Live to watch our channel in full HD. Or pick a show from our on-demand video library. VSC TV is your local Connecticut Midshore Valley digital connection.
And welcome back to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and thanks again so much for being here today. I hope you're enjoying the show. Well, we continue on with our conversation with George Wright. And George, why don't we talk about what's happening with the Eugene O'Neill Theater today? What's happening there today?
Well, we've grown over the years. At first, we were just doing playwrights and having their new plays done. And the background of that was when you have $1,200 or virtually no money, and you call yourself the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, the last thing you need is to try to put on a bad production of a Eugene O'Neill play. So we tried to find something else. So that we decided, well, maybe we should do new plays, because frankly it was cheap. That was sort of the way we backed into that. But then after that, I bring you back to all this evolutionary stuff. There was a need we found that the training in many colleges for theater was pretty bad. But we had this cadre of very good people, so we decided to create the National Theater Institute, which was a kind of Marine Corps basic for young people who wanted to go into the theater. So we had the student program, and along the way, if you have plays, why not have musicals? So we started to do musicals, and 9 came out of our shop pretty early on. That was the first award-winning play we had, or musical we had, and then of course since then we've had people like the In the Heights, Miranda's show, and a lot of musicals. So we have a musical program, and that goes on. And early on in Waterford, maybe people don't know this, but Howdy Doody is alive and well and lives in Waterford. The people who built Howdy Doody were the Margot and Rufus Rose, and they helped me start the O'Neill. So we have a puppetry program, which is now brings people from puppeteers from all over the world. So we have a puppetry program, and we have, and my wife Betsy was great in starting a cabaret performance, workshops for cabaret performances. So we have quite a spectrum, and then along the way we had for many years the Theater of the Deaf, which did their things and toured all over the world. But right now we do plays, musicals. We have the student program, which is fully accredited by Connecticut College. We also have a program with the Moscow Art Theater in Russia, and we have the cabaret performances, which are very popular, and people like that.
Well, before we forget, congratulations to you. The Monte Cristo Award is coming to you in April.
Thank you.
Tell us about what that's all about.
Well, it was it's an award that I'm a little embarrassed because I created the award. Now I'm getting it, but there's been a lot more. It's been about 15 since I started it, and that's to honor people who have made a major contribution to the theater. People like Brian Dennehy, the late Brian Dennehy, and Jason Robarts, and people like that who made their own contribution. It's not like an Oscar or an Emmy. It's really a lifetime achievement kind of award. And it's the award itself is a statue, very heavy, because it's a reproduction of the statue that we have at the New London Railroad Station of Eugene O'Neill as a 8 or 10-year-old kid sitting on a rock with a pencil and a notebook. I thought of that as something like the Copenhagen Mermaid, and so it's a reproduction of that. But it's really to, or at least as I conceived of it, is to award people for lifetime contributions to the theater.
COVID I always ask my theatrical people, and I deal with Broadway, I deal with everybody in arts and entertainment, how has that affected your theater community according to your perspective, let alone your theater?
Oh, I think it's terrible. I mean, it's been a terrible, I think we're slowly coming out from under it. But when you think about it, if you're an actor, let's say you're an actor, and thank God I'm not one anymore on every level, but if you're an actor, you get a job in a show on Broadway or off Broadway, and you make your living that way. Well, with COVID, they closed the theaters, and so that if you're not an actor, usually if you're just a working actor and you're not working, you usually get a job like a waiter. Well, they closed the restaurants, so you're really up against it. You have no way to perform as an actor, and you can't even perform as a waiter. So, thank God for welfare, for these actors, because it's really been tough on them. And then for us, we've had to, our last season, which was last year, we had to go virtual in many, many areas in order to keep going and keep trying to support bringing new plays and musicals out, even though it's been rough. I think this year coming up we'll go back to business as usual, I hope.
I was going to ask you, here we are February of 2022, what does the rest of 2022 look like, 23, 24? Will the theater come back?
Oh yes, I think so. They're beginning to, Broadway's beginning to come back, and we'll have a season, seemingly, at least at this point, a regular season like we had before, and everybody's looking forward to that. And they've gone, because it seems like COVID is sort of beginning to, well, it's not drying up, but people can deal with it a lot better. So we'll have a season with all of our programs, hopefully going full bore, from starting in June with the puppetry program, which is really extraordinary. I push the puppetry program because everybody thinks it's great for little kids. It is, but it's not all. Puppetry in other societies is very advanced and very interesting and very original. And we'll start with that program going right through August with the cabaret program, with plays and musicals in the middle. So hopefully, unless there's a bad spike in COVID, we'll go ahead. And I think I begin to see things opening up on Broadway now. Music Man's coming up, opening, and other new plays and musicals are beginning to come to life. So that's good. But it's been a rough year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah. Before we forget the website, what will the viewer find when they go there?
Well, they'll find all of our different programs under the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, the different programs from our student program that goes on during the school year to the playwrights, musicals, puppetry, and cabaret. It's all there on the website, which we've tried to, and we keep massaging it and getting it as the programs evolve. Hopefully the website evolves too.
What are you doing these days? You're a young man, but things have changed.
I don't know about that.
Things have changed for you. What are you doing these days?
Well, trying to stay as much out of trouble as possible. But I still direct when it comes out. I love directing, and that comes out. I'm doing some writing, some different scripts that are more like documentaries. So I do those. I've written a script before for the Mystic Seaport on the Morgan. We're trying to do a sound and light show based on the whale ship, and a script on the history of Yale football, which is a passion of mine. So I managed to stay off the streets most of the time.
Well, as we start to run out of time, what are your thoughts to the viewers? I know they're loving getting to know you, and they're so honored that you're spending some time with us today. What are your thoughts for them?
Well, the thing I'd love to have of the viewers come to the O'Neill in Waterford. We're right on 213, right off, not that far off the I-95, right down on the beach. And the programs will start in June, and come. And it's purposely not expensive to be there. And there's a pub that goes with it, so you can always get a drink. And if you don't like the shows, the shows are inexpensive enough, so if you don't like it, you can walk out. That was my premise at the very beginning, make the shows inexpensive enough so if you're really bored, you can either go get a drink at the pub or just leave, and you don't feel that you've already mortgaged your house to go to the show, and you can just leave or come back the next day or whenever. So I'd urge people to come and try it. It's a beautiful location. It's right on the beach, 95 acres, Waterford Beach Park, and there are plenty of signs. Finally, that was my first big victories, to get the state to put up signs to how to get to the O'Neill off the exits.
Well, I thank you very much for being here today. We've run out of time, so thank you again.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
And thank you so much for being here today. My name is Deborah Gilbert. You've been tuned into Arts and Entertainment. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I'll see you again next time. Have a super day. Bye-bye.